This video is about balancing chemical equations, in particular word equations, from your practice sheet number 4, and then we're going to do our first problem, problem number 1. Okay, so we're going to read the problem. It says, when lithium hydroxide pellets are added to a solution of sulfuric acid, lithium sulfate and water are formed. Now, you should be able to do lithium hydroxide. It is a type 1 polyatomic. You will probably not be able to do sulfuric acid. I will help you out with that formula. And then lithium sulfate, you should be able to figure out that formula because it is a type 1 polyatomic. And then it says water also is formed, and hopefully you do know the formula for water. So we're going to start off with lithium hydroxide. So lithium, we need the charge of each one of these. We're going to find lithium on the periodic table. So if we go back to the periodic table here, we find lithium is right here. What is its charge? If I go down to our monoatomic sheet or page, which is right there, okay, and we find lithium is a +1. Okay, so we're going to put a +1 above lithium, and then we're going to go, or a 1 plus. Hydroxide. Hydroxide, even though it ends in I, there's not an element that's hydroxide or a hydroxine or something else like that, but it is a polyatomic. So we're going to go back to our sheet, but we're going to go all the way to the end to our polyatomic ion sheets. So let's get to the polyatomic ion sheets. Let's find hydroxide. Right there it is, OH, and it's a -1 or a 1 negative. So let's go ahead. We know that it's OH, but it is a -1. Okay, so I can go ahead and write that down. I can write that down right here as in lithium, Li, and then hydroxide was OH. Since they are 1-to-1, they already cancel each other out, so we don't need to crisscross. We only need one of each one. Okay, that's going to be added to sulfuric acid. Now, sulfuric acid, I can tell you right now, it will always begin with an H. So the formulas always begin with an H. Now, sulfuric will be 8. So ic goes back to 8, so it's sulfate. Because there's no hydro, okay, we know that there is oxygen in it. So sulfate. So what is the formula for sulfate? If I go to this right here and I see sulfate, it's SO4 and it's a -2 or 2 negative. So I'm going to put down SO4. I know that the sulfate is a -2. My hydrogen is a +1. So if I go back to this page right here, we know that if I bring up to that sheet, okay, hydrogen is a +1. It could be a -1, but in this case, it's just like an ionic compound. So it's a +1. So we'll go back to that. We know that's a +1. So if I have a +1 here, a -2 here, I have to have 2 hydrogens for that. So there's the formula for sulfuric acid. Okay, so we said those right there. Now we say that lithium sulfate are formed. So we're going to go with our arrow, and we have lithium sulfate. Lithium, if you remember, was a +1, and sulfate, if you remember from this one right here, sulfate was a -2. So we're going to flip flop. So we're going to put a 2 here, and we're going to put a 1 there, and we know that just go to this. We know that we have to flip-flop those, so they are the opposite. So I need how many lithiums? We need Li, and we're going to be 2. It's going to be 2. And then sulfate was SO4. I had to bring that back up. SO4. And we added water to that, plus water, which is H2O. So here's our skeleton equation. Again, once we get to this part, we always have to say, do we have any elements by themselves? Do I have the same elements on each side? Well, I have lithium and lithium. I have hydroxide. Ooh, I have water over here, so that makes up for it. Okay, so I have hydrogen and oxygen. Sulfate on this side, sulfate on this side, hydrogen on each side. Now notice that I have a hydroxide ion here, but I do not have a hydroxide ion there. So when I write out my stuff down here, I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to put the hydroxide polyatomic ion in there. We're going to separate those out because I do not have hydroxide on both sides. So again, we can put our molar ratio here. And then we're going to go ahead and put in our what we have on each side. So we're going to put our elements that we have on each side. So we have lithium, we have oxygen, we have hydrogen, and we have our sulfate, SO4. Okay, so lithium on each side, oxygen on this side over here. Remember, we're not talking about this oxygen when we do it because that's going to be tied up with this one right here. So it's only this oxygen and those right there. So let's go ahead and put what we have on each side. We have one lithium on this side. We have two lithiums on this side. We have one oxygen on this side. And on this side, we have one oxygen. On this side, we have one hydrogen there and these two here. So I have three hydrogens on this side, and I have two on this side. And my sulfate, I have one on this side, and I have one on this side. So now we know what we have. We're going to wait for our sulfate on each side, and we're going to go with what we want to change up here. Now, I would say that we could go ahead and change our lithium first. Okay, so in order to do that, remember, we do not change the subscripts. Once we make these compounds up, that's the compound. We can't change the subscripts. Then we don't change the coefficients. So we're going to add a coefficient of 2 right here, which now lets us know that we have 2 lithiums, but that it has also changed our oxygens. So now I have 2 oxygens, right? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 hydrogens, which makes it nice because this is a 2-to-1 ratio and this is a 2-to-1 ratio. Everything else is balanced. So all I have to do is go back over here and say, what do I need to get 4? I have 2, so I put another 2 here. So that changes this to 4, but what does it do to my oxygen? It changes it to 2. Now again, I like doing oxygen at the end along with my polyatomic. They're already there. So now I have my molar ratio, which is 2 to 1 to 1 to 2. So I can write that in there. 2 to 1 to 1 to 2. I again highlight it, look at it. Can I reduce? I cannot reduce, so I'm going to go ahead and make it bold. Okay, and then I'm also going to highlight it with a different color. And there's my answer for question number 1 of practice sheet number 4. So good luck with the rest of them. Hey, as always, go Mohawks. Nelson out.